It's UUCC Zoom-in Live with special guest Eileen McCully. Here's your your host, David Kantor, with co-host Will Barrett.
Hello, everyone.
Whoops, sorry about that. Unless you're with us a few weeks ago, you can't say that you were at the very first episode of UUCC Zoom-in Live, but you can say you were at the very first episode featuring a co-host. Say hello to the audience, Will.
Hello, audience. How y'all feeling today?
So, Will, you're at Kent State right now, right? You're actually at school.
That's correct, David. I'm currently at school.
So what's it like being there? What's it like in the classes? What's it like in the dorms? Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, I'm pretty much in the same place when it comes to my classes in my dorm, considering everything is virtual because of COVID.
So you're not actually in any classrooms?
Nope. I'm just on the computer in my dorm most of the day.
So you come across a lot of people that way, or people staying away from you, or, I mean, socially distancing? How's all that working out?
I mean, there's still campus life. It's not as boisterous and full as last year prior to COVID, but there's still people on campus. We do a relatively decent job of socially distancing here, wearing masks. But you have the few rebels who throw parties regardless. You get that at every university.
And Will, how are those parties?
I wouldn't know. I don't go to parties.
Well, it's good that you just said that, because I saw your mom's on the show right now. I'm sure she's waiting for you to say that. Good answer regardless. Nicely done.
I wasn't about to be caught slipping on the Zoom.
So listen, everybody, for those of you who were with us last time, you know that we've arranged this year to have co-hosts on the show with Will Barrett and Jenna Bradbourne, who I think might be in the audience this evening. Hi, Jenna, if you're there. So. Jenna's going to be our co-host in a couple of weeks when we have our next show on the 28th. We did this to basically make sure that we had a wider range of perspectives as opposed to just the old guy here, so that basically you could hear a little bit of different music perhaps, as opposed to 60s soul, which was what I play all the time, of course. And
I like 60s soul.
I know you do. Well, people hear that later, of course. And of course, we have different perspectives on the topics we'll explore with our guests. So you'll hear all that later also. So, as we mentioned in all of our communications about this, we're hoping this will give us a way of being together every couple of weeks. If you're with us for our first show, thanks for coming back. If this is your first time with us, we're sure glad that you're here tonight. And we're hoping this becomes a part of your routine. Now, a quick reminder for everybody, most of you have already done this. If you have not done it up till now, please use the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen and announce yourself. So make sure you send it to everybody and not just to the panelists, okay? Because your fellow congregants clearly want to know that you are here. So let's see. So I don't know if Jack Ullman made it on here tonight, and I know he was trying to. Jack Ullman is here. That's excellent. So as many of you know, Jack Ullman, who's a longtime member of our congregation, both at First U and now at UUCC, is the master of the punny joke. And because of that, we've established the Jack Ullman comedy moment, where we'll have a joke from Jack. So Jack, what's tonight's entry?
Well, David, I'll tell you, first of all, my COVID 15 pounds is really starting to show. The buttons on my trousers are starting to social distance. Very disturbing indeed. Now, if you're one of the 3 or 4 conservative Republicans in our congregation, you'll need to turn the volume down because you're not going to like this one. It seems this fellow was talking to President Trump. He told him there had been a parade for the president down Pennsylvania Avenue. There were hundreds of thousands of people along the parade route screaming and cheering, certainly bigger than anything President Obama ever had. President Trump was so excited and said that the parade was a wonderful idea. He asked, "How did my hair look?" "I couldn't tell," replied the messenger. "The casket was closed." Jack's joke signing off. Back to you, David.
Thanks,
oh,
Jack.
Lord. Oh, that one tickled me pink.
Well, Will, we're in the early stages of our search committee for a new minister. You know that, right? That news has made it out to Kent, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I've heard about it, if not anyone else.
So Lori Albright, who's one of the co-chairs of the search committee, is in the audience, has agreed to give us a brief update. So Lori, hey, how are you? Glad to have you with us tonight.
I'm great. Good to
So
see
how's
you,
the search
everybody.
process going so far? What's going on?
So I wanted to tell you a little update about the search process, because we are, Mike Miller and I are the co-chairs, and we have a fabulous team of Dawn Arrington, Amy Collins, Meg Pauken, Lou Salsa, and Mark Weber. And there's 3 things that I wanted to mention tonight. The first thing is that there is a congregational survey that's out there, and I'll bet you everybody here has gotten theirs in their email, and maybe you filled it out, and if you have, we want to thank you. But I am here tonight to tell you that the deadline has been extended. And so if you haven't had a chance to find that 25 or 30 minutes and fill that puppy out, you can still take time this weekend, because the deadline's been extended a week till Friday, September 25th. That was number 1. Here's number 2. And this is more exciting, because this means we can get together virtually, yes, but we have 14, count them, 14 meetings set up for congregants. Thank you, Will, to good following directions.
No problem.
Ways for us to gather virtually from mid-September, which is now, until mid-October. And 9 of them are focus meetings, which means they have either an invitational aspect or an identity aspect. So for example, if you are a middle or a high school youth, we have a group just for you if you would like to participate. If you are parents of younger kids and would like to participate with other parents, we have a group for you. Or past presidents, or former society folks, all kinds of things we have scheduled. And if none of those focus groups speak to you, we have 5, count them, 5, what we call cottage meetings. Thank you, Mr. Kantor. So that folks can sign up for those and just gather with other folks in the congregation. And I'll bet you're wondering, what are we going to do in those meetings, right? So we're going to discuss 3 questions. The first one is, how would you describe this congregation to its prospective ministers? Number 2, looking back after our minister's been with us for a year, what will be your measures of success? And number 3, what should the new minister know about our culture? What did you have to learn, both spoken and unspoken, as you join the conversation? I think those questions are going to be a lot of fun to discuss in a group. And the most important thing is that the more participation we get, the better we will be able to present ourselves to prospective ministers. If they find out that, oh, only a couple people showed up at these things, they may conclude that the congregation doesn't really care about who our next minister is. And I think everybody in our congregation does really care. So we need your input. So do I have time for my last ask for help?
You got to do it really fast, because Eileen
Okay.
is getting itchy.
Okay, so we were talking about having an anthem. And here I need help with writing the chorus. So we're just going to get you in the mood real quick here. This is the song. Okay, so, and here's the beginning of it. Searching for a minister, filling out my survey, zooming in a meeting. Our voices point the way. And now we need a chorus. So anybody who wants to help with that or has any questions about the search process can email us at search@uucleveland.org. That's search@uucleveland.org. Thanks a bunch, guys. Can't wait to see what Eileen has to say.
Thanks, Lori. So again, if you have any comments for Lori or the gang about the search process or about the musical help that she clearly needs, please just get in touch with her or the folks in the search committee. So, okay, enough of that stuff now. Okay, let's get on with our special guest, Eileen McCully. Eileen's been one of those folks in our congregation who has modeled the behavior for being a UU who drives issues of justice in our community. She was also a prior board president at the First U, and is currently on our leadership development committee. So gang, take yourselves off of mute if you can and give a warm UUCC welcome to Eileen McCully.
Yay!
Well, Eileen, that's clearly a bigger round of applause. And you know, last show I did with Mike Carney, he got some big applause also, and I got none. I thought Will might help me get more applause tonight, and nevertheless, you know, clearly the score is now guests 2, Kantor nothing. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
So we're doing okay
I'm
so
feeling
far. You know,
groovy.
this is our first time Will and I doing this together, and so hopefully
Very true.
The rough patches won't show as badly as it did for the Browns yesterday. That can't happen. Never mind.
Yikes. You compare this to the Browns. Oh, no.
Well, low bar, I grant, low bar. So Eileen, how you coping with COVID?
You know, funny you should ask, David. I have until recently counted myself one of the most fortunate. The main impact of COVID on me is that I had a chance to have both of my boys at home. You know, they are 20 and 23. And not every mom gets to have their sons or their kids at that age to come home. And I really, really enjoyed that. My younger son, Ethan, is back in Chicago now, and he'll start school in a couple of weeks. Evan is still at home. But I have to say that I've reached the point where I'm kind of done with this, you know? Like in the spring, I could sort of look forward to being able to be outside in the summer, and I enjoyed being outside. And now I'm just looking at winter and being stuck in the house. And, you know, I got to say, it's really getting old.
Well, I think you ought to write COVID a strongly worded email. I think that'll just fix the whole thing for all of us, I think.
Oh, I didn't say there was any justification for my complaining, but, you know.
So what are you missing the most because of COVID?
I think I'm missing being out and about, you know, not necessarily any one place in particular, but the cafes, the museums, the movie theaters, you know, I'm missing that stuff. I'm feeling a sense of loss.
So you going to restaurants at all? You going to the people's houses, any of that kind of stuff?
I recently, I have eaten out a couple of times. Recently, last week, I met with my dear friend and co-congregant Janine Purcell at a cafe, and it was like the most normal thing I'd done in a really long time, and that was very refreshing. But no, I've been quite cautious, and I have not done a lot. I go to the Heinens essentially, and you know, that's about it.
So it is a very, very sad and low bar when I have to admit that my biggest outing of the week is going to the Heinens and being there for a half hour. I'm feeling as though, right, 3 and 21, but never mind. Yeah.
You know, it was very, very exciting when I went to the Whole Foods last week. That was
being wild. Yeah. So Eileen, there's a lot of, you know, so maybe people know this, maybe they don't, but you're heavily involved in voter registration stuff with the UU the Vote and that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about what prompted you to do this and what it's all about. Give us a couple minutes on that.
Okay, before I do that, David, I'm sorry, I have one plug to make about Beloved Conversations. You may or may not know that Beloved Conversations, which about 40 of us participated in this past spring, they are hosting a virtual Beloved Conversations session beginning shortly, beginning in the fall. And because of our experience having our Beloved Conversations truncated, we have the opportunity to waive the $150 participation fee. So anybody here at UUCC who wants to participate in Beloved Conversations virtually can do so. And if I will put in the chat hang on one second. off for a second. I'm just getting some, okay, here we go.
Eileen, you could do that during the break. It's okay. I don't have to do it right now.
Okay. So anyway, I know that you also participated in Beloved Conversations. Is that right, David?
I did not.
You did not. Okay.
Looking forward to the next round.
Okay. Oh, so are you going to sign up for the virtual?
I'm looking, so, you know, when I saw that the next round is one where I could be with members of my own congregation, that interested me. I wasn't necessarily too enthused about the idea about being with other UUs from
Right.
Timbuktu or Guatemala, but the fact that we can be there with other people from UUCC, that does appeal to me.
Okay. And then some people in the chat are discussing how much they got out of it and how they really think everybody should. So I tried to copy the information into the chat, but I will do that at the break, as you said.
Right.
So, okay, back
So gang, you'll all notice, so you are now, you recall I mentioned earlier on that Eileen's a former First U president, and so you saw her political skills at work there. Well, I asked her a question about colors, and she gave us answers about the moon. So you are now all prepared for the presidential debates, because of course that's what you're going to see all the time there. So Eileen, if you're interested in answering the question I first asked you now, you can go ahead and do that now.
Okay, I think it was about
Voting. You the vote.
So here's what's happening with UU the Vote. I have a email list of about 42 members of the congregation, and I try and keep them informed about various activities. It turns out that the kinds of activities that UU the Vote is sponsoring are not ones that our congregation members are very enthusiastic about. I've gotten a lot of feedback when I tried to encourage people to do phone bank parties by Zoom. I got a lot of feedback that people really aren't comfortable with phone banking. They don't like being on the phone. They have hearing issues that they're not happy with. They get flustered. But I do know that lots of people in the congregation are doing a lot of other activities, like you, David. I know that you're writing letters. Many people are writing letters with various organizations like Swing Left and the Sierra Club, I've heard. Which one are you working with, David? Do you remember?
So I'm working with two. So I'm working with Nova here in Northeast Ohio, where I've actually been making a bunch of phone calls to people to get them registered. This is people who they registered a few years ago just to make sure that they have valid registrations. And then I'm working with a couple of different groups in Pennsylvania. So I'm being nonpartisan here in Ohio, but in Pennsylvania I'm being very partisan, and I'm making phone calls to quote unquote get out the vote, but it's not just generically get out the vote. I'm doing it to get out the vote for the Democratic candidates there.
Okay. And I have some information that I will post in the chat later about this Thursday evening. There's a phone bank for talking to Ohioans who are less likely to vote, like infrequent voters. And then next Tuesday, I believe, there's a national UUA, UU the Vote action to contact voters in Florida with, in collaboration with some partners on the ground in Florida, to again, try and contact people who are less likely to vote to encourage them to get registered and do so.
Now, as an aside, you know, for those of you who might be interested in doing this kind of stuff, two things that I've observed. So one, if you don't want to talk to people, don't worry about it. Because when you make phone calls, you rarely get a hold of anybody. I mean, basically, you're spending most of your time leaving voicemails for folks or hearing that the number's been disconnected. So you don't have to worry about actually speaking to a bunch of people who are going to spit in your face metaphorically, because that's not going to happen. So, so in a given time on the line in a couple of hours, I might call 80 people, and I might speak to 5, maybe. You know, so most of the time it's leaving voicemails, which, by the way, I'm told over and over again, does end up mattering also, that really still does have impact. Eileen, is that your experience also? What do you hear from other folks about that?
Yeah, I have done some phone banking in the past, and I'm going to participate tomorrow evening and probably next Thursday as well. Yeah, it's because what we're doing is generally nonpartisan. You're not engaging in any kind of debate with anybody. You're discussing like the brass tacks of getting registered, and making sure that if you're in Ohio, we spend a lot of time talking about getting that absentee ballot so you can vote by mail, which everybody in Ohio is eligible to do. But there's a process for it. You have to request an application and then send it in. You know, people generally are not obnoxious about that kind of interaction. And as you said, you know, a lot of times you're leaving a message.
So before we go on any further, I want to jump to somebody in our audience right now. Since we're talking about the prospect of actually voting and how you go about doing it so you can vote and vote safely. We're fortunate to have in our audience tonight Steve Dell, who's a member of our board and a veteran of many years of the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. Steve swears he was not working there when Harry Truman was elected, but he's been there long enough to know about paper ballots. So Steve, how you doing this evening?
Great.
So can you just take a minute for us and embellish upon what Eileen was just mentioning about how to vote and vote by mail and how all that stuff works?
Sure. Well, yeah, you do have to request the ballot. So we do need a paper copy of a application turned in, and they're coming in quite a bit. Everyone's paying attention. We have over 250,000 in right now.
In Cuyahoga County?
Huh?
In Cuyahoga County?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, at this time, 4 years ago, we had about maybe 20,000. So they're really coming in. Anyway, so, you know, get that application in as soon as you can. Ballots will start going out October 6th. We can start mailing.
Steve, I've heard a lot of discussion back and forth about when you get your ballot by mail that you should fill it out and get it back in ASAP, concerns about the post office, rumblings about there only being one drop box in the county, although I understand the Board of Elections just authorized others. The Secretary of State is saying, no, that doesn't count. Do you have any information about that you can share with our group here?
Not much more than what you just said.
Well, I sound very smart. Then that you just made me sound smart, Steve. Thank you very much.
The board voted on it this morning, and then about 2 hours later, we got an email from the Secretary of State saying, nah. And he wants to let it run through the court system.
Will it go through the court system before the election?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, that part I'm not really sure how that all is going to play out, because there'll probably be, you know, counter lawsuits or whichever way the decisions are made.
So Steve, if you have one last question for you, then I want to go back to Eileen. If people are hesitant at all about voting by mail, should they be? Is voting by mail going to be as solid a way of voting as voting in person? Talk to us about that just for a minute, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. It's, you know, there's a concern about stuff with post office and things like that. And I mean, I can't emphasize enough how much dialogue we have with the local post office on Orange Avenue, the main post office. I mean, it's a 10-minute drive from the Board of Elections. So we're, you know, able to pick up, get our pickup pretty quickly. And if there's ever any problem, you know, we have people we can call and we can get answers and we can find out, you know, what's going on. So, you know, I mean, now personally, I run the early in-person voting, so I want people to come down and visit me. but yeah, vote by mail is safe, secure. It's a great way to get your ballot. You can vote on your kitchen table and get it in.
Great, thanks, Steve. We're going to go back to Eileen now, but everybody else, Steve will be with us throughout the show. So if you have questions for Steve, when we go to the audience participation piece, you can ask him a question then. Eileen, what prompted you to get involved with this, with the voter registration stuff? What happened here for you?
Well, I mean, I guess it's obvious to me that our democracy works best when everybody gets to have their voice heard. And it seemed to me that we weren't getting anywhere near everyone's voice heard. We have dreadful, dreadful statistics for voter participation in Ohio. And you know, it was my hope that we could reach and register and somehow facilitate the voting of people who are generally not heard from.
So I understand that you have something going on in adult religious education also. Well, I'm going to come to you in a second. So I know you have a couple questions for Eileen. I hear you're going to be one of our faculty members for an adult religious education class. You want to share something about that with us for a minute?
Sure. In a bail reform group at the ACLU, Lori has been with me. Lori Albright has also participated it's been over a year now. There's a great organizer there called Melekta Malaku. Some of you may remember her. She was at a forum that we had about bail reform. And more recently, we've been joined by other members of the congregation, including Bonnie Casey and Pat Dillard. And over the course of the year, I've learned a whole lot about what's wrong with bail. I talk about it whenever I can, because I feel like if people knew the truth, they would be outraged, and that bail reform would happen tomorrow. Because the essence of my argument is that there are people in jail because they're poor. There are people who haven't been to trial. They're called the pre-trial period. So they've been charged with something, and somebody has said, well, for you to have your freedom until your trial, you need to pay X amount of money. And obviously some people can't do that. And so those people end up stuck in jail at the Cuyahoga County Jail, which we all know is among the worst, very worst in the country. That really is a sort of a two-tiered system of justice, and they're able to cooperate with their attorneys. They're able to collect evidence if that's necessary. They're able to live like human beings and show up at their court date well-groomed in regular clothes, not in an orange jumpsuit. Over the course of that pretrial period, they're home where their families need them. They're able to keep their jobs. They're able to pay for their houses. Whereas the people who are stuck in jail, even being in jail for like 2 or 3 days, can completely derail your life if you lose your job. So it's terribly unjust, and it's not what any of us were raised to believe is the way this system works, right? Or innocent until proven guilty. So we will talk about that and all the other there's lots to talk about because prosecutors have their hand in this. The judges have something to do with bail. And the legislature as well. So there's plenty to talk about. Bonnie and Pat and Lori are all going to help me teach this class, and it's going to be great. So I would love to have the opportunity to talk with people about it.
Great. Will, you have some questions for Eileen?
Well, yes. We'll stray a little way about the more broad questions and ask some little more personal questions. So I would first like to start off with knowing a little more about you. Tell us about your childhood, where you're from, and how your family was growing up.
Okay, so I grew up on Long Island, even though I don't sound like it.
Long Island?
And I grew up Catholic in a fairly large family. I was one of 5. I went to school on the East Coast. That was where all the trouble started, right? I went to Brown, which was a pretty far out there liberal kind of place. And that's where I got a lot of my political activism chops. And I had a degree in history from there. And then after college, I met Eric, my husband, Eric C., who many of you know.
Where'd you meet him?
What?
Candy store?
We were both in Washington, D.C. He was doing an internship at NIH, and I was goofing off between college and grad school. And we went to we met at a house party on Capitol Hill, where neither of us knew the people who lived in the house. We were both brought there by other people. And the rest is history. And so Eric lured me to the Midwest because he was in med school. So I got into grad school at Kent State and got a degree. Hey. That's right. I have a degree, a PhD in clinical psych from Kent State. And I actually did that work for a couple of years, and then the kids came along, and it just
right.
made sense in our family for me to stay home with them. And so I did that. I have no regrets about that. I really loved every minute of that. So that about brings you up to speed. Will, you got
Yeah,
any
well, I
more?
want to caution you before you get to your next question. I just want to caution you, because I should have mentioned Eileen's got that PhD in psychology.
Yeah.
So she's been monitoring all your body language and every word that you say, and she's going to shrink your head by the time we're done with the show. Just so you're warned about
Oh
that.
Lord,
Go on, though.
I'm
Well-
glad you warned me.
Will, that's only true to the extent that I had the concentration left over after analyzing David. So I think you're pretty safe.
I'm not the primary target. Ha ha ha. So you said you grew up Catholic and you grew up in Long Island. How did you become a Unitarian Universalist at First U, Long
Yeah.
Island, Midwest, Catholicism?
Yeah.
How did you end up here?
Okay, well, Eric's responsible for bringing me to the Midwest. He grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And when we met, he was taking time off from University of Michigan. So when he went back to Michigan, I ultimately came. And so our visit to church came just before our second child, just before Ethan was born. And clearly we were looking for a place that was consistent with our values, that we would have some sort of structure for providing religious education to our kid. Catholicism was totally out of the question. And like, you probably don't want to get me started on that, Will.
I mean, that's up to David. He's the one keeping time.
Keep going, Eileen.
Okay. And so we came to, we tried a few different places, but honestly, and I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, but like the minute I hear God the Father, like I'm done, I'm out the door. So
Oh my gosh.
you're horrified.
Preposterous.
I don't question anybody else's faith, but like that doesn't work for me. And so a friend who's no longer around brought us to First U. It was about like a week before Daniel and Marge Corletti were installed as our ministers. So I am of that vintage. And I was really moved from the very beginning with the message I was hearing. And I was sort of, in a short amount of time, I was all in.
Okay, that's interesting background story. Now, I heard you earlier speak about your work with voter registration, as well as your work with social justice, specifically regarding criminal justice reform. So how is your Unitarian Universalism faith tied into that, as well as your family, any other work you may do? How does that tie into that?
Well, let's see. I think of myself, Will, as a woman of faith.
Okay.
But my faith is one that's sort of focused on the relationships between people. Like it's clear to me that there's a really extraordinary power that we have to make a difference in each other's lives. And for me, that is what's sacred, that connection between us and the fact that we can use it for good or for ill. And so obviously that has everything to do with the way I interact with my family. And clearly, my faith lets me both question this. It directs me to see injustice and the absence of compassion around me, and it allows me to question the foundations of that, like where that comes from. Like it doesn't make me say, well, that's it's in the Bible, that's the way it has to be. I feel like I'm encouraged to question, and that's sort of the first step.
All right.
Well, Will, you sure asked her some heavy stuff there at the end. So I'm going to lighten us up right now before we go to break. Okay, Eileen, last question for you before we go to break. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I've thought about that a lot, David, because you gave me advance notice that I was going to be asked that. My superpower would be that I would have the capacity to, for brief amounts of time, and without any danger, to paralyze people, to make them be quiet, and to insist that they listen to what people are saying to them. Now, I wouldn't want my power. I wouldn't want my power to be able to affect their response or their ability to understand that or empathize with that. That's a little too creepy for me. But to make them shut up and listen, I think that would be a fabulous superpower.
Just note, Will, it's just a little too creepy. Not a lot too creepy, it's a little too creepy.
Hey, my teachers would have loved that superpower when I was in, especially my Sunday school teachers. And speaking of, Mariella just asked me what my superpower would be. And
We'll get to that a little bit later. I'll ask you that later when we wrap up here. We got to get going right now. Okay, again, we're going to take a brief break to get your questions organized. So if you have a question to ask Eileen or anybody else who's been on the show to this point, please use the Q&A answer button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and ask it. Please do not use the chat button. I used the chat button last time and I got awfully confused. So it's not in Q&A. I'm not looking at it. So we'll get things organized for you to ask your questions for Eileen when we return. Then we'll take a 3-minute break. Thanks, everybody.
A petition from a Quaker delegation in Philadelphia calling on Congress to end the African slave trade and abolish slavery in all its forms. This petition was written and signed by Benjamin Franklin. It cannot go ignored. If this comes to a vote in Congress, what is the White House's position? Secretary Jefferson, you first. Tread lightly. Sir, the Constitution clearly states that the states have to wait until 1808 to debate on whether to end the slave trade. And whether or not you want it, guys, that is the final compromise we made. Sure, wait. But for a second, let us say that we can legislate unanimous emancipation. Freedom reigns, and yes, it's great. We cannot cure prejudice or righteous desperate hate. So back to Africa, or do they get a separate state? In 1784, I tried to float banning slavery in the West. My notion didn't get a single vote. Slavery's a sin, it's growing like a cancer. But we can't address a question if we do not have an answer. Is it my turn? Good. Plantation states are packed with promise makers. Do you realize the precious time these legislators wasted? Institutionalizing slavery only multiplies our troubles. Wait till the 1800s and the population doubles. You all know this is a stain on our soul and democracy, a land of the free. No, it's not. It's hypocrisy to subjugate, to humanize a race. Call them property and say that we are powerless to stop it. You not foresee? Sir, even you have hundreds of slaves whose descendants will curse our names when we're safe in our graves. How will the South find labor for its businesses? How will Thomas Jefferson find his next mistresses? How dare you? Still, people follow like lemmings. All you're hemming and hawing while you're hee-hawing with Sally Hemings. That's enough. Well, you asked how I feel. I don't pretend to know the answer, but the question is real. If I may, Mr. President Madison, let's take this moment to establish a precedent. First of all, sir, we won't involve you in this. Imagine this debate with all of Congress is ruinous. I'll reassure the South 1808 is still the year that was agreed upon. That buys us time and assuages fear. I'll tell the North that on January 1st of that year we'll ban importation handling the worst. Once I get all this agreed upon, I'll pick up a pen and introduce a motion never to discuss this again. Mr. President Hamilton, if we support emancipation, every single slave owner will demand compensation. And as for slandering Jefferson with talk of mistresses, do you really want to have that conversation? No. Madison, execute your plan to the letter. Let's hope the next generation thinks of something better.
Stepping on children's blocks.
Okay, gang, we're back now. If that sounded like a song from the musical Hamilton, it's because it kind of is. It's from the Hamilton mixtape. It's a piece that didn't make it into the play. So I highly recommend that mixtape. I've only listened to a couple of songs. My daughter Liz suggested it to me. I thought that'd be a good piece for us to play this evening.
You know what song they covered with that song?
What?
They remixed of Tupac's Hail Mary.
I did not know that. Thank you. Interesting.
No problem.
So, ready to take a few questions, everybody? So, Marianne, we're going to do you first. You can ask Will your question. Marianne, what do you want to ask Will?
I gotta get her, making her talkable. Hold on a minute, I can't find her name.
She's third down from me.
There she goes. Okay.
Mary Ellen, you're on the air with David Kantor, Will Barrett, and Eileen McCully.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Mary Ellen.
What would your superpower be?
My superpower, wow, I have so many to choose from, but my primary one would be to be able to slow down time so I can do things at my pace. Because, all this schoolwork and due dates, no bueno.
Yeah, I know. Your time is usually a little slower than everybody else's time.
Sometimes,
I get it. Okay, that was my question.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mary Ellen. Kathleen Binnig, you're up next. What's your question for Eileen?
Okay.
Eileen, my question is, what's in your garden?
Oh, wow, Kathleen. What a fab question. I have had a fabulous harvest of blueberries this year. I've had good cucumbers. Right now I'm deep in tomatoes and eggplant. Everything else is kind of starting to get a little gnarly around the edges. But as always, my garden is my joy and my place of meditation and stress-free living.
How does it feel to be deep in tomatoes? I don't know what that means. Kevin Ortner, you're up next with Eileen.
Well, it was actually a question from me.
Oh, hi, Meg.
Kevin Ortner's better half. And when you say you're knee-deep in tomatoes, I have a visual of Ethel and Lucy stomping grapes, only you're doing it with tomatoes. So stomp away, Eileen. Yes, exactly.
Hey, Meg.
Hey, so I want to know, first I'm going to ask Eileen, and then I would like our host to answer. What is the best concert you ever attended? Like you left and you were like, whoa, talking about it later.
I would have to say, and it's hard to decide, I've been to many sort of transcendent Cleveland Orchestra concerts, but that was as a real grown-up. And I think I was closer to transcendence when I was younger, just given the level of passion. And I was once at a Peter Gabriel concert that blew my mind.
So my best concert ever, this actually predates Mary Ellen, heaven forbid. My best concert ever was seeing the Rolling Stones at Madison Square Garden, with the first act being Stevie Wonder.
Ooh, wish I was there. Stevie, I like me some Stevie Wonder.
Yes. So, so it's interesting because that concert took place just at the cusp where Stevie was going from being a soul act to being a crossover, being a pop act, a popular act. And I knew him because of the music I like to listen to. But there are lots of folks in that audience who were Stones fans who didn't know this guy from a hole in the wall. And then we were walking out, people talked about how great the Stones were, because the Stones put on a great concert, of course. But Stevie Wonder killed it. I mean, basically, he really set the stage really great that day. I mean, I was also at another great concert where I saw James Taylor with Carole King as the first act. But if you get me going on this, I won't stop.
Wait,
so
just
I'll shut up now.
One quick boast. Stevie Wonder sang at my graduation. He was getting an honorary degree, and he sang.
Lucky.
It was pretty awesome.
So was it you and him together? Were you doing a duet on the stage? Is that what it was? No, it's probably him and Lori. That's right. We heard Lori before. That's right. It's probably him and Lori.
I'm young. I'm young, but I've been to a lot of concerts. I would have to say I've been to enough, so I have to just give you my top 3 in no particular order. I went to a music festival that had old school artists. Best performer was Ice Cube. I saw Big Boy from Outkast at the Agora, and then at the Agora as well, I saw a group I like called Run the Jewels. Top 3.
Ellen Georgia, you're up. What do you got?
So my question is in the spirit of having been rewatching Seinfeld lately, where I just watched Kramer recreate the Merv Griffin show, which reminded me of what's going on right here. So I'm just curious, David, thinking of all the, talk show and variety host, exemplars you could be pulling from. I'm curious who's in your head. Who are you trying to be when you put this program together?
So first and foremost, of course, and I'm trying to be David Kantor. But that's right, Will likes that. But I mesh, there are a couple of 3 different things I'm meshing in my brain. I'm meshing the old Phil Donahue show, because that's what this whole segment's all about now, right? Phil used to run around the state. If we were actually doing this in person, I'd be running around with my microphone, asking people for their questions and stuff. So I'm metaphorically doing that. I think about the TV show, the daytime show called The View, where those 4 or 5 women are on the stage talking about stuff and kicking stuff around. And then there's an esoteric one. It's a guy named Tony Kornheiser, who some of you might know. If you're a sports fan, you might know his name. He's on ESPN's most popular talk show called Pardon the Interruption. And he also does a podcast. And basically, some of the things I'm doing here kind of are modeled after things he does on his podcast. And yes, so Marianne won't make the joke online about this. Yes, Tony is an old Jewish guy from New York. So shut up now, Marianne. We'll stop right there.
Hey,
Tom McKenna, you're up.
She read this
Wait,
perfectly.
you missed the anonymous attendee question.
Oh, I missed it. No, it comes. Mine has it after Tom.
Okay, either way.
Tom, you're up.
Okay, yeah. Hey, we're delighted to be here. We missed the first David show, so I figured if I didn't make the second one, I'd never hear the end of it. So
that would be an accurate observation, Tom.
But Eileen, I guess a little more serious question on the topic of bail. One of the arguments that you read, of course, I'm not sure if it has validity or not, and I'd be curious as to what you can educate us on, is that it ensures that the person shows up for their trial. Does that have any statistical significance? Does that have any validity whatsoever? Be just interested in your in you educating us.
Sure. So the question is, does cash bail actually increase the rate of appearance at trial? And the answer to that is a pretty unequivocal no, because it's people generally would like to show up for their trials, but they live in really complicated lives, and they have kids to take care of and jobs that they have to be at. And sometimes they lose track of the date of their appearance. And so in several different municipalities, including Cleveland Muni Court, there is clear evidence that if you just give people text reminders, then they are going to show up for their trials at something like 95 to 96%. So there is no reason to believe that cash bail is required to coerce people into turning up for their trials. Good question, Tom. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the info.
Hey, we got an anonymous question here for Steve. So Steve, we got to unmute you so you can answer this one. Somebody asked if this had been covered before, but if in any case, what is the status of paid postage for mailed-in ballots? Should we call our, and then part 2 is, should we call our state reps about this?
The first part is there was a meeting today at the controlling board, and Secretary of State presented his case, but they voted 4-2 along party lines to not allow it to go through. So I'm not really sure what the next move on that is. We're really starting to run up, against the clock here on getting those ready. But and then yeah, obviously, yeah, call your representatives. I mean, I think if they get flooded, they might do something. But right now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Steve, before you go away, can I just bring up a point? You mentioned early voting a minute ago, but I just wanted to emphasize that for people who are concerned about voting during COVID, and if you haven't managed to request an absentee ballot, early voting is a really great option because you can go knowing that there's not going to be some big line, and you can get your vote taken care of quickly. And then go home. Have I got anything wrong about that, Steve?
No, it just, we're not sure about the lines. But we are doing quite a bit. We're working with an architect with the county who's helping us, design the voting room to make it, safe.
Okay.
We're working on, plastic sheeting, for the lines inside. There'll be a tent outside the building all the way down 30th and all the way through Euclid. But they're helping us like set up where we can put voting booths and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of attention going into that. So but yeah, we have no idea. We had 45,000 voters 4 years ago for the whole early voting, and we're not sure who's going to show up now, but we're ready.
Okay, and anybody can do that, right? You don't have to have a special application or anything?
No, in fact, if you requested a vote by mail ballot and maybe late you requested it and you didn't get it, or you're starting to get concerned, you can come down and vote. You won't have to vote a provisional. We'll just look you up. We'll find your record and we'll suspend that ballot that we sent to you.
Oh, wow.
So I have a feeling that's why that last week could be pretty crazy if people get concerned that their ballot hasn't been, they haven't received it.
Okay.
Last question's coming up here now. Shane Millett, you're up. What's your question for Steve?
Well, hello, everybody. My question is, Steve, if I heard you correctly, you said 250,000 absentee ballots were requested this year, 20,000 last year, if I heard the math right. I was wondering if 2016, a presidential year, typically how many absentee ballots are requested?
Well, yeah, 4 years ago, it was around 290,000 total for the whole election. So that's why that 250 at this point, we're 3 weeks out from early voting even starting.
So just to clarify, 2016, there were 290,000 votes in Cuyahoga County?
Absentee.
Or absentee?
Yeah.
Okay. And then also shout out to Run the Jewels. Love Run the Jewels.
Hey!
So Eileen, Steve, thank you for answering all those questions now. Sorry if I'm cutting anybody off, but we're running out of time here. Each episode right around now, we're going to read your emails and texts with your comments, questions, suggestions, and stories. If you have anything you want to share, and we really are encouraging this, please send it to Zoom-in at uucleveland.org, ZOOMIN at uucleveland.org. Honest to goodness, I read everything that's sent to me. It wasn't too big first time around. You send it to me, I'll read it. And if it's good enough, it'll be responded to on the show here. So, and yes, we're not above a little bribery to encourage you to share your thoughts. Each show will have a drawing from the folks who send us a note, and the winner will receive their very own UUCC Zoom-in Live mug. Of course, liquid for that mug is not included. So here's the comments we got last time. First one was from Don Stimpert. Don said, please do make the Jack Ullman jokes a regular feature of the show. I was unable to do video on this session. That's because he was driving across the Nevada desert, coming back from California, visiting his newest grandchild. I'm sure that would have made it even better. Good job, David and Mike. And then from Terry Robbins, you're a natural, David. Jack's joke of the day is genius. Mike's a fantastic first guest. Artwork impressive. Carol or Kat, actually, Elizabeth Kantor. Only suggestion is louder volume from the music. Could barely hear it, and I had my volume turned up. Hopefully it was loud enough this time for you, Terry. Well done, David and Carol. And just in case you think I might reading you the good ones here, Carol, we can go back to the video now. I do want to point out, I did get one from one person, my dear friend Matt Smith, who told me, David, don't quit your day job. Thank you very much, Matt. And by the way, for those of you who want to know, here is the mug. Eileen, put yours up to the camera there. Thank you so much. That's your UUCC Zoom-in live mug. And for our first show, Donna and Terry both are getting mugs. Matt, you're getting a sieve. Just joking, you're getting nothing for this evening. Eileen, thanks for being here tonight and having the bravery to follow Mike Carney and be an early guest on our show. Thank you very much. Oh, and before I forget, Will, what about our next show?
Oh yeah, our next show is September 28th. Our show is every second and fourth Monday of the month. And our special guest, yes, David, I know you told me all of our guests are special, but nevertheless, our special guest next week will be Alan Georgia, our Director of Religious Education. We'll be discussing adult youth religious education, superheroes, and a whole lot more. And unfortunately, Tier, I won't be hosting this time. It's unfortunate. I know David's gonna miss me, but no worry, because we got someone who's probably leaps and bounds better than me. Next episode, we're gonna have Jenna Bradbourne hosting with David.
And let's give a major league round of applause to Carol Gay, our board president, who produced tonight's show. You know, Will and I do all the easy stuff. Carol has to make sure that everything actually happens here. So we're wrapping up now, gang. But if you'd like to catch up with your fellow congregants, there's going to be a link in the chat function to a UUCC Zoom room. No host, no guests, just a chance to chat with your fellow UUs. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for the next edition of UUCC Zoom-in Live. Eileen and Will, say goodnight, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
The issue on the table. The states have to wait until 1808 to debate on whether to end the slave trade. And whether or not you want it, guys, that is the final compromise we made. Sure, wait. But for a second, let us say that we can legislate unanimous emancipation. Free tried to float, banning slavery in the West. My notion didn't get a single vote. Slavery's a sin, it's growing like a cancer, but we can't address a question.
Yes, sir. I'm feeling good, man. We totally rocked this. I did. It was nice to see and hear from everybody. I haven't heard from everybody here in over a year.
When I wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without warning, love, bears heavy on my mind.
Yeah, I felt it was a lot of good interaction, a lot of good crowd interaction. Everybody received us going back and forth pretty well. Kind of like being in church.
Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
impossible to fake. When someone else instead of
For sure.
always seems to know the way. Then I look at you.
Thank you.
All right with
Thank you.
me.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I enjoyed myself and I appreciate it.
Just one look at you. And I know it's gonna
I agree. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
be a lovely day.
All right, I'm about to go to the college thing. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
When the day that lies ahead of me seems impossible to face, and when someone else instead of me always seems to know the way, then I look at you and the world's all right with me. I just one look at you and I know it's gonna be a lovely day.